to our weekly gynae oncology session. Today is our tumor board. The participants of today is from Bogura Medical College Hospital, and which is one of our district hospital and one medical college hospitals. We arrange in weekly tumor board and alternate week in journal club and the debate session. And in that case, today is Bogura Medical College. The two consultants from Bogura Medical College Hospital, they are going to present our case. At first, I request Professor M. Hi, sir, to start the session. Sir, please.
Thank you, Sana. My heartiest welcome to all the participants and the faculties. Today we are faculties from I'm happy that today participants are taking part from Bogura, out of district from Dhaka. It's about 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers from Dhaka. They are taking part for the first time. We're happy to see that. Without any delay, I think we should start. Sana, please start.
The faculties of our today's sessions, we have three foreign faculties. The faculties of our today's session is one from Annie Catherine Goodman. She is professor and head gynae oncology department in Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School, Boston. And another is Dr. Supriya Chopra. Supriya Chopra is associate professor, and she is associate professor, Department of Radiation Oncology in Tata Memorial Hospital. And another one is our beloved teacher and our beloved, she was with us in 15 days ago, she was with us. He is Dr. P.K. Shekran. He is the pioneer in gestational trophoblastic disease in Southeast Asian region. She is obstetrician and gynecologist. I want to know my great heartful gratitude and thanks to all these faculties.
Shahana, we have Rama with us also. Rama is also with us.
Sorry. We have our another faculty, Professor Dr. Rama Joshi. She is head in gynae oncology department in her. I have the different. Gynae oncology department and robotic surgeon in Fortis Memorial Hospital in Gurgaon. And I request our first presenter, Dr. Mafrua Jahan, to present her case. Dr. Mafrua Jahan, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Is my slide visible?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I'm a gynae specialist working in Muhammad Ali Hospital, Bogura, which is a district hospital. I'd like to send my gratitude to Oncology Club Bangladesh to give me opportunity to present a case in this platform. My respect goes to chairperson of this webinar and president of Oncology Club, Professor M.A. Haisar, Professor Shahana Parveen, Madam, Dr. Kamaluddin, Dr. Kamal, and expert faculty members and learned audience. Can I start my case? Mrs. Z, 52 years old, menopausal for 6 years, mother of 3 children, age of her last child 13 years, history of taking oral contraceptive pill for 10 years, no family history of malignancy. She was attended at outpatient department of NICRH on 26th July 2018 with the complaints of post-menopausal bleeding for last 2 months and post-coital bleeding for last 4 months. On examination, a big cauliflower growth about 4 into 3 centimeter found in cervix. All fornices were shallow. Left parametrium was involved by growth. Clinically, it was stage 2B. Histopathology report was invasive squamous cell carcinoma grade 2. She was advised for concurrent chemoradiation and brachytherapy. Due to long queue, Her radiation date was on December 2018. During that time, 3-cycle induction chemotherapy was given from 22nd September to 5th November 2018 with cisplatin and 5 fluorouracil, and received total dose of 50 gray EBRT from 23rd December 2018 to 26th January 2019. She received 3 insertion of ICRT, 3 insertion with HDR, cobalt 60, 3 insertion within 8 days, day 1, 7 gray, day 5, 7 gray, and day 8, 6 gray, total 20 gray from 12 to 19 February 2019. After completion chemoradiation, she was on regular follow-up. Her pap smear report revealed negative for malignancy till 22nd August 2020. On 24th October 2020, she was presented with continuous passage of stool per vaginally. For this complaint, she was referred to surgery oncology OPD for evaluation. Surgery oncology advised MRI of pelvis, which showed large uterorectal fistula, minimal residual lesion in cervix without remarkable regional spread. And now I'm sharing my slide with Dr. Ruxana for better explanation of the MRI slide.
Ruxana, please. Please stop your slide share. Mafruha.
Stop calling slide share. Stop করে দিচ্ছে।
Ruxana, please.
ওখানে কি আনমিউট করছেন নাকি? আওয়াজ পাওয়া যাচ্ছে না।
Ruxana, you need to unmute yourself.
Ruxana. Are you muted, Ruxana?
Yes, madam.
Okay.
Madam, am I audible?
Yes.
Good evening and greetings and respect to everybody from me. Is my slide visible?
Yes.
This is the sorry. This is the contrast sagittal view of MRI of this patient, showing this is bladder, this is vagina, this is cervix, and this is uterus. Behind the uterus, this is the rectum. We can see here the posterior wall of the uterus and the anterior wall of the rectum. In this point, lost their continuity. And here we can see a fistulous communication between the posterior wall of the uterus and the anterior wall of the rectum. And this is the contrast axial view of MRI of this patient. See gas within the rectum, gas shadow, and this is the uterus. And between the uterus and rectum, there is a large fistulous communication. We can see here, and it is about 2 centimeters. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, you stop your share. Mafruha, please. Mafruha, continue, please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
So these were the slide. And report, the impression showed minimal residual lesion in cervix without remarkable regional spread and large uterorectal fistula. Then she underwent sigmoid colostomy on 9th November 2020 and referred to gynae-oncology OPD for gynae evaluation. On 24th November, no abnormality was detected on general examination. On pelvic examination, cervix was flushed with vagina and a small ulcerative growth seen in upper lip of cervix. Vaginal wall were fibrosed due to radiation. Small hard growth felt on cervix and anterior vaginal wall felt as edematous and indurated on bimanual examination. Parectal examination revealed both parametrium were fibrosed and biopsy was taken from the growth of cervix and sent for histopathology, and report is still waiting for to come. And that was all about this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mafruha. At first, I want to request all our mid-level doctors and junior doctors, if you have any question regarding these patients, please raise your hands, or otherwise you may ask the questions directly to Dr. Mafruha or anybody of us. At first, I request our mid-level doctors, you please, have you any questions? Then you have to ask, requested to ask the question, please.
Madam, I am Dr. Rukhsana Parveen. I have a question.
No,
What is
Dr.
the
Mafruha,
cause of-
No, it is the task then. Regarding this history or anything, history about these patients. ওগুলি পরে পড়েন, এই কোশ্চেনগুলি পরে জিজ্ঞাসা করবেন। Okay. Is there anybody in the mid-level who can ask any question in the history of patients? Otherwise, I request our faculties, if you have any query about these patients, you may ask the questions to our presenter.
Assalamu alaikum, Appa. I have a question. I'm Dr. Lutfa.
Yes.
The question is, when her initial parvaginal examination was done during the rectal fistula, the growth in the cervix, is it not present at that time? Or
Yes. During that time, there is a fistula gap, there was a big fistula, and there was the hard stool impacted into the rectum and also in the vaginal cavity. And the patient, when she was found in outpatient department, it was tried, and she was requested to come and to complete after evacuation of her bowel, but she didn't come to us. And again she came, and again there was the stool continuously coming, and she was referred to in that time to that surgical oncology department. So it was not in that time, that situation, that the biopsy was taken.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Our faculties, please, have you any query about this history?
I'm Dr. Supriya here. Can I just ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So what was the anticipated delay in starting radiation that neoadjuvant chemo was used? How many months of delay was expected? So there was a waiting period because of which
Yes.
neoadjuvant chemo was used, right?
Yes.
So what was the expected delay? How many weeks or how many months?
Usually, these patients are treated in National Cancer Institute. It is a government cancer hospital, only government cancer hospital. Here there is the huge patient load, and we have minimum 4 to 5 months delay for getting radiation. And during that time, usually our patients are advised for the induction chemotherapy. Minimum 4 to 5 months.
I'm Dr. Parveen. Can I ask one question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What was the initial stage of the patient and when the patient was treated? Because I came late, so I couldn't hear all the history. Just in a short, if I can.
Yes. Mafruha, please. Mafruha.
The patient came in July 2018, and at that time there was a large cauliflower growth which was 3 to 4 centimeter involving cervix. and her left parametrium was involved at that time, and it was diagnosed as a case of clinically CS cervix stage 2B
Okay.
in July 2018.
She received external and intracavitary both with concurrent chemotherapy. Is it
Yeah, and first
completed treatment?
No, ma'am, she received induction chemotherapy during that time, and she started external beam radiotherapy. It was started in November, probably. Mafruha? EBRT, when it was
Yes,
started?
it was started in November.
Yeah.
November to January.
Then she received brachytherapy also.
Yes, yes.
Brachytherapy in February.
February. Yeah. At first, she received induction chemotherapy 3 cycle with
then
cisplatin and 5-fluorouracil. After that type, her radiation was started in 26th December 2019 and completed in January 2020. After completion of her external beam radiation, she received 3 insertion of brachytherapy. Within 8 days, 3 insertion, day 1, day 5, and day 8, 7, grade 7, and then 6 grade, total 20 grade.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Sahana, can I just ask one question? Very nice to see you all, and Dr. Amal, thank you for the opportunity. This patient had received 3 cycles of induction chemotherapy. After that, did you evaluate her for any kind of the response with that of the chemotherapy? Was the size of the tumor less? Or how much was the response which you could document clinically in this case?
No, we didn't do that. So we had a question. I think we had to evaluate the patient second time when the patients come for the radiation. Usually the patients, when they get the radiation date, they directly go to the radiation department.
Oh, I see.
So I think it is one of our fallacy. When the patient, the radiation can start it, before that we should evaluate the patient.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Can I ask a question? This is Dr. Jannatul Firdaus to Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Roma. To Dr. Roma.
Yeah, Firdaus, how are you?
Yeah, how are you? How are you? You're fine. Okay, my question is what you have asked. If gynecological evaluation performed and it showed that there is reduction in the size of the tumor, then also parametrium not so involved, then what you suggest? What could you suggest in this patient? Do you suggest to do radical hysterectomy?
No, I think if the size of the tumor is more than 4 centimeters, usually these are the patients to be taken up for the concurrent chemoradiation, because most of the time you will see that the surgery alone is not sufficient. Actually, you have to add some kind of the adjuvant therapy based on either the node positivity or the Sedlis criteria, where the size of the tumor is big, either LBSI positive, and also actually depth of the infiltration of the cervix. This is expected to be actually more than 2/3 in these cases. So in order to reduce, the morbidity of the unnecessarily more than one treatment, we should not select these patients for the upfront surgery. When the size of the tumor is most of the time is less than 2 centimeters are the ideal cases, but otherwise up to 3 centimeters, I think we can go ahead for the surgery based on whatever the evidence we have today.
Yes, I can understand, but why, as you have suggested, to do PV examination after induction chemo?
Yes. I think it's a very important and interesting finding. Whenever we are giving the neoadjuvant chemotherapy to these patients, and when they respond, then these are the patients likely to respond to that of the radiation therapy, I think, in the same way. But if these patients do not respond to the neoadjuvant chemotherapy, the radiation response is likely to be less. I think Supriya is here in the panel, can add to it, because whatever the neoadjuvant chemotherapy trials which have taken place in the advanced stage of the cervical cancer, I think this was a very interesting finding which they had come up with, so that they could predict the response of even the radiation therapy after giving the chemotherapy to these patients of the cervical cancer.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
Supriya,
I will just add by saying in Tata, we've completed and published this trial of neoadjuvant chemo plus surgery versus chemoradiation in stage 1B, 2, and 2B. It was published in Journal of Clinical Oncology in 2018. And actually, the arm of neoadjuvant chemo and surgery was presumed to be superior. And that is how that trial started. But in the end, the outcomes were reversed, which means that chemoradiation for locally advanced cervix cancer should be the treatment of choice. And when you are doing any form of neoadjuvant chemotherapy for these advanced, also node positive tumors, you actually end up causing a detriment. So that was the reason I also asked the question that how long is the delay? So I know that also here in India, sometimes the waiting lists in government hospitals can run very long. Up to 4 to 6 weeks is considered acceptable, but anything beyond that does go into unacceptable range. So I don't know what's the perfect solution, but giving neoadjuvant chemo actually does more harm because it puts tumor into accelerated repopulation, which brings back to Rama Joshi's question that what happened to the tumor, right? That actually they end up having a poorer radiation response because you put tumor into a bad state of, but I don't know what's the right answer if there is a waiting list for 5 months.
I think the centers required to be, I mean to say added. That's the only thing based on the demand, because we can't compromise beyond certain limits so far as the outcome of these patients are concerned. And very nice that I mean to say, this itself is suggestive, as Dr. Shahana has already pointed out, that these patients have to wait. And Dr. Supriya, I do not know even the scenario otherwise is that whether the intracavitary is available in majority of the centers, or there is any kind of the delay even after giving the external beam radiation therapy and using the intracavitary therapy in cervical cancers.
So actually, it opens up actually much more broader question than the case in discussion. But just to tell all of you, in India also situation, and in many other developing countries is very similar. So for example, in India, we did national level mapping of brachytherapy resources. And we realized that close to 14 or 15,000 women in India would have slightly delayed access to brachytherapy. So to counteract that delay, what we did was we changed our radiotherapy fractionation. So for example, for external radiation, instead of giving 25, we try to give, or 28, we try to give 23. It may seem a very small thing, but if you treat 500 patients per year, you can save actually 1,000 fractions. You can treat 50 patients extra in a year in that same time. Same holds true for brachytherapy. Instead of doing 4 applications, we try to do 2 applications or a single application and give multiple fractions. So we still try to keep the overall treatment time, but these are things that you have to see at local and national level. Whatever I say may have very limited relevance.
Yeah, very true. Thank you.
Supriya, would you like to comment about the Brazilian paper they had with the neoadjuvant, and they have shown that after giving neoadjuvant, there was some detrimental effect?
Yes, so basically we can look into all kind of papers of systemic therapy, neoadjuvant, adjuvant. So if you look into neoadjuvant chemotherapy, the major 2 randomized trials are EORTC and JCO. So both have very similar findings in favor of CTRT. And I, in collaboration with some colleagues, have now finished a meta-analysis of even adjuvant chemotherapy. And I know all of us are awaiting results of Outback trial. And that meta-analysis, which we'll soon send to print, of around 2,000 patients, there is no benefit even of adjuvant chemotherapy as of today, despite a positive Gonzalez trial. And then you have this trial which has come from Brazil. So isolated studies are showing effect, but when you put all the data together, systemic chemotherapy given separate from radiation does not have as much benefit as concurrent.
Ruxana, you please ask your question. Ruxana?
Eke, are you here?
Yes. Eke, cool.
Eke? She's there?
No, she's not with us.
So, Supriya, I was talking about one paper It was not neoadjuvant. Actually, this was a paper they have looked at the induction before radiotherapy, like that we had to do under compelling circumstances. So there was a question that there were whether this paper, I think, was a published paper. They have shown that giving this 3-cycle induction chemotherapy before starting the radiotherapy was not doing benefit. Rather, we assumed it was doing detrimental, but this was a paper published from Brazil that they have shown that it was doing some detrimental effect before radiotherapy, not surgery.
Yes, it does have a detriment, and that detriment has been uniformly demonstrated across multiple publications. So I know that I cannot give clear answers, but very recently there has been actually a very ground level publication from Sri Lanka in Journal of Global Oncology. So they have a similar healthcare system where there are very limited radiation centers, and the median delay to start of radiotherapy is around 120 to 128 days from the time patient has presented. And there, if you look into their 3-year or 5-year outcomes, they are almost very similar. So the question is delayed start versus giving, systemic chemotherapy. So I think there are things that may need reorganization, and I'm not the best person to do that, but there is an initiative that we are leading in collaboration with IAEA and many other centers across the globe of creating an advocacy for availability of radiotherapy resources for cervix cancer. So I think we can extend that mapping, but it is not to answer today's question. It is a much broader question. So at some point of time, this practice of neoadjuvant chemo will have to be stopped. And I don't know what's the right time or right answer for the moment.
Thanks, Supriya. This actually, I wanted to bring this in the discussion that in oncology, chemotherapy can sometimes show some magic, say in head and neck cancer, even in cervical cancer, that we did chemotherapy 2 or 3 cycles and tumor disappears. But our target is not always tumor disappearance. Our target is finally the survival and the outcome. As you mentioned, say in head and neck cancer, if we give induction, it show magic and it comes back more fast. So sometimes, as you said, accelerated repopulation or creating some resistance clone, maybe, as you said, we really don't know, are we doing good or bad? Because practically, yes, tumor is growing, we have a 4 months waiting time. Shall we allow the patient to grow? Rather, let us give some chemotherapy to give some consolation. But end of the day, if we are really not getting overall survival benefit, so maybe we are not doing good, maybe we are doing some harm. So as you said, I totally agree with you. Sometime down the road, we need to stop this practice to do neoadjuvant not only before surgery, but also before radiation. And we need to bring up the radiation time, rather making a false it is a false belief that we are doing some good. Probably we are not doing good, because response of tumor is not a surrogate of ultimate outcome. It is a temporary relief the patient is getting, but probably the same patient, we don't know, there is no randomized trial, and it will never happen that after 4 months, if we give ideal treatment, what would be the outcome? But maybe it could be better to have a fresh case rather than a treated case. As you said, it will creating a resistance clone. So even after 4 months, when we are starting the patient, we are not getting the optimum outcome of chemoradiotherapy or brachytherapy as we have treated the patient before with the chemotherapy. So that is a concept that we all carry, but practically seeing a patient growing tumor and having some alternative to give chemo, that is a tempting, and that is practiced in many developing countries like us.
So what should we do in this
Increase the
patient?
capacity of radiation, as Supriya said. She
Yeah?
is a strong advocate from IAEA.
Oh, so it's you, the people, you should do that. With today we want to some other discussion, so we don't bargaining with this.
So for this patient, actually,
Yeah.
I think it is important to
Yeah.
rule out, recurrence, because there is a lurking suspicion that there may also be recurrence in
Yes.
this patient.
Yes.
So, Dr. Rama Joshi, I just wanted to ask you, would you consider this patient for exenteration if there is recurrence?
I think that is the only answer for this patient.
Yes.
She should go for posterior exenteration for sure. As I could see on the MRI, the cleavage between, you can say, the bladder as well as that of the cervical region and the uterus that was very much preserved. So we can preserve the bladder, and we can have to go for the complete posterior exenteration, and we will have to go for the colostomy. And because these are the patients post radiation, most of the time the patient is having fistula. We do not know whether this fistula had been the result of the recurrence only, or this had been the added, you can say, the fibrosis, or maybe the radiation induced fistula. Maybe the rectal wall was involved initially, and later on actually that sloughs after some time, and usually the recurrence occurs, maybe it's a sort of the delayed fistula formation, but here the disease is there. So I think I would prefer in such cases to go for the colostomy, diversion not diversion, rather it will be the permanent colostomy with that of the posterior exenteration.
We have some questions. Yes. What do you think? Why this fistula? Is it radiation induced or disease induced fistula? What do you think?
Because there is a disease, so
Yes.
we can say it is radiation induced fistula.
So do you think that during August there was clinically there was nothing abnormality, and cytology was done and it was normal within these 3 times? Is it
actually, so the recurrence has come, Dr.
Yes.
Shahana, as you said,
Yes.
that clinically there was a suspicious lesion in the part of the, or in the cervical region. It was the hard and suspicious. Of course, you have taken the biopsy and sent it for histopathology or awaiting histopathology.
Yes.
Most of the time, at the time of the recurrence, you will have some kind of the abnormal lesion, which is very important. The other thing is that I would rather go for the PET CT in this case in order to see that there is no evidence of disease anywhere else. This had initially presented with that of the bulky cervical tumor. So I think that will be the ideal way, going for the PET CT, excluding that there is no metastatic focus anywhere else, and it is the localized recurrence of the disease. Then only I think one should go ahead with that of the posterior exenteration.
Eke has joined. Eke?
Yeah, sorry, I had to take a call. I'm back. I'm sorry, Dr. Kamal, you were asking me a question when I got paged out. Sorry.
No, I was asking about a paper that you shared with me. I think it was from Brazil published. They have shown the detrimental effect of chemotherapy before using radiotherapy. If I'm not, it was from Brazil, because all the paper that we see is the neoadjuvant trial that Supriya is telling it's a prospective or retrospective. But that is probably the only paper they have seen the impact of chemotherapy for the waiting time. And they have shown it is doing some detrimental effect. That was I was trying to ask.
Right. Apologies. Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately we have the standard of care, which is chemoradiation in tumors that are not considered operable. And then we do what we have to do when we can't get someone into radiation in a timely manner. When I kind of take a look at all these papers, putting them in conglomerate, I would probably say that for many of the women were not causing harm. And the Brazilian paper, and there was actually a paper out of Italy many years back that showed histopathologically that you did see a response when you did do the radical hysterectomy. The problem is, of course, you have a very mixed group of patients, some of whom who are going to have chemosensitive tumors and some who are not. And I think that ultimately muddies the water in terms of making big, broad statements. I think it's important, as has been said, that if it's possible to get people into radiation in a timely manner, we know we have very, very good evidence that that's the best thing to do. And that really neoadjuvant shouldn't be considered an acceptable standard, but it's really done to keep people treated when you can't immediately get them into radiation. That's be how I'd frame it.
Okay. Ruxana?
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Yes, madam.
Questions. You please ask your questions.
Madam, my questions was that causes of fistula formation and new treatment plan, but I have already got this answer. I have another question. What investigation should be done in each follow-up in post-treated CS cervix patient?
Supriya, please.
Most of the time in such cases, we have to go for the history. Any kind of the complaint patient has, we have to really document and record that. Based on that, our investigations may change. Most of the time, we are doing the clinical examination along with that of the history, whether patient is asymptomatic or symptomatic. If patient is asymptomatic, then you have to go for the general examination as well as the gynecological examination that includes right from the inspection of the vulva. You have to look at the vagina and also the cervical region, and you have to go for the bimanual, and that is a rectovaginal examination is a must after the treatment, because the recurrence may be there, may not be visible on the speculum examination, and you are likely to feel between your fingers any kind of the nodularity and the, you can say, the induration into the parametrium, because the patient had comparatively a bulky disease with the involvement of the parametrium. So there can be the recurrence in the parametrium, there can be recurrence felt maybe a little higher up in the cervical region. So the clinical examination is very, very important. In post-radiation patients, I think the cytology, that becomes a little, I mean to say, controversy, because we do not know. Sometimes in such patients, the cytology plays any kind of the role so far as the early detection of the recurrence. So majority of the patients who had only surgery, after that, the cytology plays a very important role in picking up the early lesions. So in post-radiation, I don't think so cytology is advised anymore as a standard of the care going for as one of the investigations. And then we have to go for the ultrasound examination. Simple ultrasound, whole abdomen is good enough. Of course, you don't require X-ray chest unless the patient is symptomatic, or you have to do it maybe yearly, but it again depends on the patient is having very high risk or early disease or little late disease. So that's how I think the standard of the follow-up is initially every 3 months, and then it can be between 3 to 6 months. Initial 3 years, we like to go for 3 to 4 months as that of the follow-up, and then every 6 months till she completes the 5 years of the follow-up. This is what is the standard protocol.
Thanks, ma'am.
Dr. Supriya, do you do the Pap smear or any cytological examination yearly or anytime in your follow-up in your center?
So let me answer this in follow-up
Yes.
policies in a slightly different way.
Yes.
And so there are two things. So when we treat patients with chemoradiation, local disease, as Dr. Joshi has already said, is very easily amenable to clinical examination. So for local disease, we do not do any imaging after treatment for up to 6 months, because if there is clinical response, so presuming patient has a clinical response, so if a patient turns out to be a complete responder at 5 or 6 months, we don't do any imaging. Also, if a patient is node negative at baseline. If a patient has residual disease going up to 5 months or 6 months, then we definitely do either a PET or MRI scan. And if patient has residual local disease, we would consider asking for a salvage hysterectomy at post-RT 6 months if there is a central only disease. So this is presuming patient is node negative at baseline. For node positive patients, they hold a distinct risk of a para-aortic relapse and also of the node not resolving. So these patients, at least 2 times in first year, we definitely image them either with CT scan or PET scan if they are node positive, just to see resolution of the lymph node. So I've already spoken about the primary, but if there is a lymph node that persists at, for example, after 8 or 9 months, we definitely do FNAC of that lymph node. And if that lymph node turns out to be positive, then we start salvage treatment at 9 or 10 months time, because lymph nodes positivity at 9 or 12 months does correlate with higher distant relapse in future. So If a patient is positive, we would consider either retreatment or systemic chemotherapy. Most of the times, a persisting node, we again go back and treat again with radiation.
Priya, would you
Can we
please
do your
explain
addition?
that, Shahana?
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned that up to 6 months for the local disease, you wait to take a decision about salvage hysterectomy. But
Yeah.
for the node, can you please explain a bit more that how you manage when there is a persistent node?
So basically, nodal resolution pattern is very different than the primary resolution pattern. So most of the nodes should also go away by 6 to 7 months. But sometimes we see on follow-up imaging that they persist as sub-centimeter nodes, or they would persist as a centimeter kind of a node. So I think if the node is not changing in shape or size, if it is sub-centimeter on follow-up imaging, you can continue to observe. But if you see anything that is within radiological diagnostic criteria, even persisting at 8 or 9 months, that means you have not done, the node has not completely responded, because typically dose to the node turn out to be lower than dose to the primary tumor. So if you are doing nodal simultaneous integrated boost or boost, a node would get 60 gray, primary gets 84 to 85 gray, depending on your treatment policies. So there is a higher risk of nodal persistence. And at 1 year, if there is any node within radiological diagnostic criteria which is persisting, we go ahead with doing fine needle aspiration cytology at 9 or 10 months. And if it turns out to be positive, we consider treating that node again.
That node, I mean, you do
Radiation. Yeah.
locally the node irradiation by SBRT or?
So basically, there are two kind of things. So most of the times, Dr. Joshi and Dr. AK can add on this thing. So I have seen surgeons not being very keen about undertaking nodal dissection after radiotherapy.
Yeah.
So there is now quite a bit of evolving evidence about persisting nodes and efficacy of some form of radiation, IMRT or stereotactic radiation. In our practice, we try to use stereotactic radiation if there is technically a relapse in the node or late persistence of the lymph node. But outcome wise, I think still there has to be more data in international literature, because technically it is an in-field relapse. So we don't know whether systemic chemo is better or SBRT is better, or a combination of both are better, or doing a nodal dissection is better. So maybe I would like to have more comment from surgical expertise in the group.
Well, you know, it's really great points, and I agree with many of them. I will go back surgically to remove a isolated mass in a radiation field. So if it, all else being equal, if it's very isolated, that I would consider it. You would have to be thoughtful about the potential for injury. And so I would usually invite my colleagues from urology to place stents and, you know, be thoughtful about that. I'd also want to counsel the patient about the possibility of lymphedema, an increase in lymphedema, something like that. So that's one option. The other option, which we do at my hospital in Boston, is have interventional radiology do localized radiofrequency or microwave ablation of a particular solitary node. That's more likely to be so for a para-aortic lymph node that's completely isolated, that's perhaps in a region that we don't want to really attempt surgically. That is something that's done. We also do that for isolated liver lesions and so forth. So just to think about as you develop your infrastructure for cancer care in Bangladesh, that partnering with radiology, especially radiologists who have an interest in interventional radiology, that is something for the future for interventions for cancer care. So that's the other thing. And then finally, I have used chemotherapy there are some patients who have very chemosensitive cancers. And in the setting of isolated disease, where you have a measurable lesion, you can try a few rounds of carboplatin, Taxol, bevacizumab, or you could do single agent cisplatin, various combinations that whatever you have available, give it a few rounds and look for a measurable response. You will have a subset that has a complete clinical response and they benefit in that setting. Not everyone does, but those would be the three ways I think about it.
I just would like to add one thing in addition to Dr. Goodman and what Supriya has mentioned. Supriya is very right that whenever we are dealing with that of the kind of the enlarged nodes and the nodal relapse in the radiated field, it's really very, very difficult. It again depends on the duration after the radiation therapy we are dealing with. More and more is the fibrosis. I think this makes the most difficult aspect of the surgical resection in the radiated field. I think I'll be happy to remove the isolated recurrence, which is happening, especially in the area where the radiation has not been given, like that of the para-aortic region. And in the radiated field, and had it been the very advanced stage of the cervical cancer, like stage 3B earlier treated with that of the chemoradiation, I think in my experience, it becomes a very difficult situation from the pelvis, especially to go for the lymphadenectomy of the involved nodes. The other problem which we face in such patients, if suppose the recurrence occurs in the radiated field, these are the cases which do not respond to that of the chemotherapy. This is what, and that's why I think the, again, re-radiation with the help of, you can say, the focused radiation to that of the particular node is added to that of the chemotherapy.
And I think it's at the end of the day, it is very important to know that this situation, when patient has persistent node, is not in the curative setting anymore. Most of these patients would just go on for 12 to 18 months, and they will go a distant metastasis somewhere. So using radiation also helps you to just slightly delay chemotherapy, which eventually you'll have to use left or right in this patient at some point of time.
Can we say that in cervical cancer, once we have finished the treatment, we should wait minimum 6 months to take a decision about a surgery or a salvage radiotherapy, whatever it is, any salvage treatment. So we should not get provoked by seeing anything, any symptom or any suspected thing before 6 months of radiation and brachytherapy. Supriya, would you agree with me for that?
This is what we do in our clinical practice, but and this is also a recommendation, but it all depends on your healthcare system, because many times the healthcare system depends who's seeing the patient. So we are very comfortable not imaging the patient, because we are very comfortable with our clinical examinations, patients trust in us. So if you talk of standard recommendation, we would just wait for 5 or 6 months and then do the first imaging.
Why I'm telling this, Supriya, the problem is two. One, sometimes the patient comes with some symptoms, after EBRT and brachytherapy, even there is some discharge, there is some bleeding, or, so sometimes it bring the patient to the gynecologist or the oncologist, and sometimes we are a bit confused. And as you said, sometimes they come with the image also. Nowadays, they don't need my recommendation. Sometimes they're smart. They do image, and the image write that probably there is something. So this type of situation makes the life very difficult for oncologist or a radiation oncologist or gyne oncologist, because the patient is having a piece of document that tumor is there, it has not gone or it has come back. So my message to my colleagues here that yes, there are special situations, there are some unusual, but normally, we discussed with Amita also before, that we can put a rule of thumb with the standard recommendation that we know cervical cancer, we have treated with a huge amount of dose with brachytherapy and EBRT, we have given 85, 90 gray, we have given chemotherapy. So we expect that there's many things are happening. It will resolve the tumor and some side effects also there. So to come to a conclusion that it is not a residual or there is no recurrence, we should give a lean time of 6 months as a rule of thumb. Like laryngeal carcinoma, you know, that people, they see edema and sometimes they jump in that there is a recurrence. So in cervical cancer, maybe a country like us, we can give a message, unless a very exceptional situation, we can wait for 6 months to go for imaging or go for a biopsy or go for cytology. You know, taking a cytology after 3 months, some atypia. So people, somebody become very excited. Well, there is some residual or some discharge. So this is a situation. So can we, the panel, to my panels, all the panels I asked, that can we just make a flat comment that, well, we can put a mark that 6 months could be a time.
No, I have a question. Without biopsy, is there any role of the surgery? Without biopsy, nobody do the surgery. Usually after radiation, usually people are there to do the surgery. Without biopsy, if anybody says there is find that there is a growth, residual disease, it is clinically visible growth and biopsy proven growth, then only. Otherwise, usually people don't do it. I disagree with this point. Usually,
I'm not
yes.
talking about doing surgery. I'm talking that patient demands or somebody,
Oh.
you will not do a surgery, but somebody
Yes.
is demanding that there is a tumor. So what Supriya was telling, that as an oncologist, radiation oncologist, we want to give a time up to 6 months around
Yes.
to look for that, whether there is a good response or the residual. Then we discuss whether it is a chemotherapy or a surgery, whatever it is.
Yes.
So this time is very important. Not to be after 1.5 months, do an image, see whether there is a regression, is there any tumor bending, do a FNSC. I mean, this thing make people life difficult. That was my comment actually.
Yes.
So there are two ways of approaching your question. One way is that if there is going to be no action point, there is no point in watching tumor again and again. So radiologically, unless and until there is, a clear-cut progression or any other medical problem, which is, for example, patient comes with backache or some kind of abdominal pain, that is a different scenario. So because there is no action point from the clinical perspective happening for 5 to 6 months, imaging can be deferred. And for patients who have residual tumor, I think I can be very confident in saying so that the reports of radiology for a resolving tumor between 3 to 6 months are as indeterminate as our clinical findings, because they will also always say residual tumor, signal seen, possibility of cancer. So it does not allow you to come to any firm diagnosis. So I think that is what we do in our clinical practice. And if I were to give a single recommendation, I will say wait for 5 months.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bhagyalokhi has joined with us. Bhagyalokhi, please.
So Shahana, you have a rich panel today.
Yes, yes.
I just joined, so I can't comment anything. So I'm just listening and enjoying.
Now, shall we go for our second case?
No. I have one more question regarding.
We have two more cases. So,
but one question.
Yeah.
That the interval time.
Yeah.
Regarding this, that after end of the treatment and this fistula, and is there any value? I mean, the impact of this interval time for the surgeon to plan for a salvage surgery. Say, if there is a long interval time or a very quick recurrence, will it affect the decision of the surgeons? Roma, will it affect?
See, here we are dealing with that of the rectovaginal fistula. It's a very, very difficult situation for the patient. This is the way we are looking at. So there are two aspects of dealing with. One is, if suppose it is the isolated recurrence, that is the local recurrence, and you can go for the salvage, then of course one should really opt for. But as you have asked, what is the duration? Most of the time, the duration is about, say, these patients, they come to us, definitely we don't expect, the recurrence coming up earlier than that of the 6 months. This is the way we are looking at, unless some kind of the residual tumor is there which has been missed and that leads to that of the fistula. The other situation is when the fistula occurs in the absence of any disease, that is the radiation-induced fistula. So in these cases, of course, you can take up whenever you are diagnosing it, because it usually takes time for the fistula to develop. So that's how I think the time is important, in the sense that the diagnosis, at what timeline you are diagnosing the fistula, whether it is diseased or without disease.
I have a
No,
small
we-
comment to make, if
Yeah.
you may permit me.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think I will not be completely sure that it is a disease-related fistula. There could be components of both, of radiation also in this particular scenario, because if I notice her fistula is at a very odd place. So normally you see rectovaginal fistula. She has uterorectal fistula. So, and the place where she has fistula on MRI scan is also the thinnest part of uterus, which means at the isthmus. And this is typically the area when you do brachytherapy, the loops of the sigmoid or rectosigmoid, when it is from rectum is transitioning to become sigmoid, they become very close. So whenever we are doing brachytherapy, we were not very educated about this 8 or 9 years ago, but now we very carefully control the doses of sigmoid, because most of the times if you see endoscopy report, the problem is not with the rectum if brachy is okay. The problem is always with sigmoid 12 to 15 centimeter from anal verge. And this is the place where pelvic space becomes slightly more, because uterus is thinning, becoming cervix, and there is more space for, sigmoid to just come and lie and be close to uterocervical region in a patient. So I would just like to be more careful in future for such patients to document sigmoid dose.
Shahana, we can move to the next case, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mafrua Jahan. Now I like to request Dr. Fatima Kamrun Nahar to present her case. Dr. Fatima Kamrun Nahar, she is Assistant Professor, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Shohid Ziaur Rahman Medical College, Bogura. Dr. Fatima Kamrun Nahar, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, please.
My slide is not visible yet.
Fatima, you need to unmute yourself.
Papa, yes.
My slide is not visible yet.
Samir, share
I'm
the
introducing. I'm Dr. Fatima Kamrun Nahar, Assistant Professor, Shohid Ziaur Rahman Medical College Hospital. I'd like to thank the Oncology Club Bangladesh to allow me to present a case in this platform.
Your slides, Papa.
আমি slide share করব?
হ্যাঁ।
My patient, Mrs. X, 48 years old, housewife, regularly menstruating woman, mother of 3 children, irregular user of contraceptive, belong to low socioeconomic status. Admitted in this hospital on 14th November 2020 with the complaints of diagnosed case of invasive mole post 4-cycle chemotherapy and plateau level of the beta HCG after IMACO. According to her statement, she was diagnosed as a case of 3 months of molar pregnancy with beta ECG level was 234 international unit per ml and normal chest X-ray. She did not give any history of cough, dyspnea, chest pain. Her bowel bladder habit was normal. It was her first ultrasonography diagnosis of hydatidiform mole. She underwent suction evacuation at district hospital on 1st May 2020. After evacuation, her PV bleeding was minimum but persistent. After 1 week, that is 7th May, repeat beta ECG showed it was 50,000 international unit per ml and remained at that level for 3 consecutive weeks. XHS showed normal on the 7th May. Histopathological report was partial mole. It was our histopathological report that shows it is a hydatidiform mole, partial mole. Then she referred to Bogura Medical College Hospital for further management. She had ultrasonography on the 15th June and the report show remains of the molar pregnancy. This is the ultrasonography report which shows hydatidiform mole. Then she underwent repeat DNC on 16th June. Histopathological report was written product of conception. Her beta ECG level was 89,012 international unit per ml after evacuation, 48 hours, which was above the pre-evacuation level. It was her beta ECG level 89,012.05 milli international unit per ml and histopathological report show written product of conception. Then she advised for TVS and result shows invasive mole. Her XHS was normal. It was her TVS report which shows invasive mole. So our diagnosis was invasive mole stage 1, score 3. Tumor board decision was 3-cycle chemotherapy with Imaco under oncology department, which started from 12th July. After third cycle of the chemotherapy, beta ECG declined to 158 international unit per ml. Then fourth cycle CT was given, but beta ECG remained static. That is 125 international unit per ml. After 1 week, repeat beta ECG was done, which was 109 international unit per ml. Then she was referred to gynae department for further management. In our aspect, patient is cooperative, mildly anemic, non-icteric, and accessible lymph node are all not palpable. All vital sign was normal. Abdomen soft, non-tender, on inspection, vulva, vagina apparently looks healthy. No secondary deposits on the posterior cornea suburethral region. Uterus was only 10-week size, soft, non-tender, mobile. Both adnexia are not palpable. Rectal findings correspond to the vaginal examination findings. She was advised for MRI of the whole abdomen. MRI showed a intrauterine mass about 6 into 5 centimeter with poorly defined junctional zone and prominent blood vessels in myometrium. XHS was normal. This is the MRI report, which shows growth within the uterus and poorly differentiated junctional zone and vascularity of the myometrium increased. So our diagnosis now, invasive mole post-Imaco stage. Now this is the stage 1, and score is 10. Tumor board decision was total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo oophorectomy. This is my case. Thank you.
Stop your slide share, Appa, please. Stop your slide, yeah. I request our junior doctors, please, at first, if you have any question, please ask Dr. Fatima Kamrun. Any question, please? I request our mid-level and junior doctors to ask any question, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Appa, I have a question.
Yes.
Her beta HCG level was declining with the imacotherapy. So why the decision was taken for total abdominal hysterectomy? Because of only 4 cycles of chemotherapy was given. Her chemotherapy schedule was not completed yet.
Shekhan sir, please. Dr. Shekhan sir, please.
Dr. Bhagyalakshmi, Professor Bhagyalakshmi is there.
Yes, Bhagyalakshmi.
Maybe she can give some comments. Professor Bhagyalakshmi.
Yeah, just I'm calling her.
Okay. It's okay. Okay, if you go back to the case,
Yes, sir.
elderly patient with a 3-month amenorrhea diagnosed as mole. If you see that first scan, though the histopathology was given as partial mole, the scan looks like as if it is a complete mole. I'm just making some observation.
Yes, sir.
Ultrasound looks like a complete mole. That's a part. Now, she was having the size of the uterus at that time, we are not sure. It was a big uterus or small uterus, we are not sure.
Uterus was 10 week size.
10 week size, okay.
Yes.
These are some of the cases where, see, apparently this case was an initially incomplete evacuation of the mole, as it happens to be. And then naturally the beta HCG will climb up like anything if you leave any molar tissue after the evacuation. And it was shown by exponential rise in the HCG level from 200 something to 50,000, and it was remaining at that level 3 consecutive weeks like that.
Yes.
My request will be, if you see after an evacuation, make it a routine to do an ultrasound after 1 week. And if there is anything remaining there, please make it complete so that any further rise in the HCG is not due to a GTN, but maybe due to incomplete abortion. So we have to make sure the uterus is completely emptied of after 1 week of an evacuation. Please do a repeat scan to see whether it is complete or not. Apparently in this case, after seeing it was 200 or something before evacuation, it has gone to 50,000 and above. It was persistent like that at that level. And that was the indication at least to do a scan to see whether it was complete or not. So that is the second point. Thirdly, after having such a case, we have to evaluate whether there is any other thing like in the uterus.
Connection.
Also at that time not done, that whether there is anything remaining in the uterus to see that why the rise of HCG going like that. So it was X-ray test was done, and with that finding that is not spreading anywhere, making a diagnosis of HCG level of more than 50,000 was taken for chemotherapy. Now it was considered as a stage 1 disease with a risk score of 3. If it is so, why we have to go in for a multi-agent therapy is the first question there. As other professor or doctor was mentioning, she was showing response, even though initially it was not. It has come down to 100 from 10,000 or so many very high level. With the third course, it has come down. And that was the time we could have continued with the course rather than Storm-Kinder. It was only 3 courses. We can go up to 6 courses at least of IMACO regime itself. So that is the third point in this case. And then now, having seen that it is something is remaining there after so many chemotherapy courses, in a multiparous woman, grand multi and elderly woman, there is definitely a place for hysterectomy. In this case, after having that much of chemotherapy and having something residual there, which now we cannot do a curettage, it may bleed profusely if it is invasive mode and all. So now there is no go. If she is not responding, there is a residual mass of about 6 centimeter size, which is a big one after so many months of chemotherapy. Now there is a definite place to reduce mass by doing a hysterectomy. There is definite place for doing a hysterectomy. I do not know whether salpingo-oophorectomy at this 40 years, yes, you can do it. But the hysterectomy is in order. Then complete the chemotherapy. Afterwards, she will respond wonderfully well, and we can get a cure. So 2-3 points is, evacuation of a small size uterus may not be very easy, first thing. Now you can prepare the cervix even in vesicular mode prior to evacuation. That you can use prostaglandin even analogs locally to prepare the cervix. It may become softer before it produces contraction. The objection was not to use medical abortion in vesicular mode was it may facilitate the dissemination of the trophoblastic element. That is okay. But if you use the local prostaglandin analogs, it mainly softens the cervix and make it easy for dilatation before making a uterine contraction to start. So prior to 2 to 3 hours, prior to your planned evacuation, you may use a cervical preparation or softening agent like a prostaglandin even when the dilatation and evacuation becomes one. So all this problem is because of the incomplete evacuation in the first place. That was the first problem. And second problem was we have to do a not check curettage, have a follow-up scan after 1 week of evacuation to make sure that it is complete. If not, at that time do a second curettage to make it complete, and then follow up with the HCG level. Even here in this case, after one evacuation, because the HCG has jumped up to 50,000 and all, and it was going on like that for 3 weeks, there was nobody thought of doing a scan at that time to make sure that it is complete or not. Okay. And then thirdly, if it is you are deciding on GTN, then we have to go in for the risk scoring and staging. The risk scoring was done. Here it was 3 only. So in that case, I think we could have gone with a single agent, and it was mainly because of the incomplete evacuation. She was not responding even with a high dose of hemacorrhagin, because very large trophoblastic tissue is remaining inside the uterus because of the incomplete evacuation, and that will produce lots and lots of HCG, and it will also invert into the myometrium. Now, once it inverts in the myometrium, it is impossible to do anything now. And now I think the decision to do a hysterectomy is very much there in a multiparous elderly woman with a tumor residue in the uterus, which is not responding. I think she is responding, but still, if you think of doing a hysterectomy, she will respond very well. That is after removing that tumor burden from the uterus. It is confined to the uterus, and then think of any metastasis. Probably in this case, after all those things, you may have to repeat the chest X-ray, a very good scan of the abdomen, liver, and also if necessary, I think it is possible to see whether there is any brain mess also in this case after so many months. So usually if the chest is not showing any secondaries, you need not go for an MRI brain. If the chest X-ray shows suspicious lesion, either CT or chest X-ray plain, then you have to go in for MRI brain to see that this. Without it is going to the lungs, it is unlikely to have a metastasis to the brain. So finally, now in this case, I think whatever is the score, I don't know how the score was going to 10 from stage 1 to 10 score. Maybe that is because of the value and failed chemotherapy. If you put all those things, it may be 10. I do not know. And then definitely it's a multi-agent therapy. In this case, after doing an hysterectomy, she will respond very well to Imaco regime, because from 10,000, 50,000, it has come down to 100. So if you remove that bulk of the tissue from the uterus, if at all you want to do, you can do a hysterectomy and give 1 or 2 more courses and then the consolidation. Otherwise, you can even continue with the Imaco regime, as Madam was telling, Madam Fatima, I think you were mentioning about, yes, you could have continued with the chemotherapy, in this case without a surgery also. So 2 options are there. In this type of patients, our patients like elderly, multiparous, and who are not responding, I don't hesitate to do that hysterectomy also, though may not be the standard way of treating it, but considering our socio-economical status of our people, there is a definite place for hysterectomy and then continuing with the chemotherapy. So that is my observation in this case. Any other comments?
Dr. Bhagya is there. Bhagya, please.
No, I was inviting her, Dr. Bhagyalakshmi.
Yes. Bhagya, please.
Sir,
Madam
I have a question.
No, Bhagya, look. Dr. Bhagya, please.
is there.
Yes, she was there.
Yeah.
Okay. Bhagya, please.
Kanapa, can I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
Sir, after 4th cycle chemotherapy, the beta HCG decrease is not 10%. And that's why they stopped the chemotherapy.
No, I didn't get it.
After completion of her 3rd cycle, her beta HCG was 158. And second, after 1 week, it was around 125. That is, it is not 1 log decreases. And after 1 week, again, it was
from 50,000 and odd, it has come down to 100.
Yes.
So response.
Yes.
It's a good response. Only thing is we are not following with the ultrasound size of the tumor mass and other thing. You follow with the HCG alone.
Yes.
So it was showing a very good response.
Yes.
You could have continued with it. But if with the gap and people are worried, there is definitely a place of hysterectomy also. So we need not worry about that 1 log fall. Even 10% fall is good enough. One log is 1/10 of the previous value. That may not happen in a tumor.
Yes.
It may not happen in a tumor or choriocarcinoma or GTN, because it may be slowly only. Even at least 10-15% from the previous value is good enough as a response. It should be at least 10% fall from the previous. Now 1 log is 1/10. That is 10,000 has to become 1,000, 1,000 has to become 100. That we expect in a normal regression pattern after molar evacuation. So in this case, the regression was not there. It was only 200, which has jumped to 50,000 and all. That was a definite place for checking whether it was completely evacuated or not, rather than going for chemotherapy. Having started chemotherapy, as everybody was feeling, she was responding, could have continued with it. Having stopped it, now what we are left with is to do a hysterectomy and continue with chemotherapy.
Her question is, after 3rd cycle, her beta HCG was 258, and then the 4th cycle was given. Then it was 158, and after 1 week it was 125. And she told that even after another cycle, the beta HCG didn't reduce too much. So even after that, we should continue up to 6th cycle.
Yes, and he is showing response. It's not that it is plateauing or rising.
Yes,
it's definitely following the HCG. That is good enough. It is not rising HCG.
Yes.
The fall, you must understand that it is started from the 50,000 level, just to hundreds.
Yes.
50,000 to 12,000, then to 11,000, to then 200 to 100. This is a very good response if you consider that way.
After 4th cycle, it was 125. Then after 1 week, it becomes 109. 125, 109, not 10% below.
No, that is, you are waiting for the next course. Without giving the course, it is coming down.
How long?
It is
How long?
Down.
6 cycle.
How 6 cycle? 6.
No. This case, we have to take it as a response to chemotherapy. The beta HCG is nicely coming down. So it is like response to chemotherapy. It's not resistant to chemotherapy. So the patient was showing response to chemotherapy, multi-agent though. So you cannot have much a choice now. You are already giving the Imaco, so don't stop it. What will you do? You will have to go to EMA, EP and all other complicated situations. So having seen a response to chemotherapy, multi-agent Imaco, continue with that at least for 2 more courses and then wait for 2 weeks and see. And if there is a rise or plateauing, then you have to think of some other form. And in this case, definitely, since it is confined to the uterine cavity, uterus, you can definitely go in for a hysterectomy. Definitely. So there is no metastasis. Really, there is nothing. So it's not that situation.
Sir, this patient had undergone 2 times of, this patient had gone 2 times of evacuation.
Yeah.
Then from where evacuation, we start to count the interval of the or second cancer.
Now, first of all, we have to make sure that you are emptying the uterus of the molar tissue.
After complete emptying, sir, question is that when they will come, they will count the day after completion of evacuation.
Yes.
The antecedent pregnancy after completion of evacuation. It is
For
either after
calculate-
second time or third time. Yes, sir.
No. What is the time interval you are asking for?
What is the time important evacuation for antecedent pregnancy for scoring the disease state? Scoring.
That is it is the pregnancy that what we have diagnosed. Circular mode was seen
It was 7 months.
7 months. That's it. So that is it. Or if we have
scoring is
we have got the patient immediately in this case, we started having the rise in HCG and GTN was diagnosed. So to calculate the interval is from the interval of the pregnancy. So
from LMP, sir, it is from LMP.
Not LMP. What we have diagnosed is at that time of diagnosing. So
when the patients come,
there is no actually. It is not that very important. If it is less than 4 months, it is 0.
Yeah.
Okay. So
In this case, sir, we have the question. In this case, the patient come at this after 3 months.
After the evacuation, you count. But from there, she developed the disease.
Sir, she had 2 times of evacuation. She had 2 times of evacuation.
Now, please you don't have to hair split like this because it's not very important. Whether the patient is coming after 2 years of a molar event or a pregnancy, then it counts. Here it is immediately after that evacuation. It doesn't matter at all. If at all, you may get 1 point if it is more than 4 months. If you take from the LMB, it may be more than 1 point. So that is not very important in the statistical analysis of the risk factors. But if it comes after years, like after normal delivery, you develop a GTN, get a GTN case, and she comes after 2 years of a normal delivery or an evacuation of an abortion, then it counts. Then the point is there. So from here, it doesn't matter. But theoretically, when you have made a diagnosis of the mole and the evacuation was done, from there, how many months it has taken to have the GTN? So that is the one. You need not go for the LMP. Say you have evacuated the mole on March 1st. Now you are following her up. And then after 4 months, you get the GTN diagnosed by the plateauing or rise in HCG. That is 4 months duration, not from the LMP. So that for that calculation, it is again simple. From where, which point
we think it is raises our scoring. We think it raises our.
Yeah, it is important in whether the interval is too many months or weeks. I mean years. Then it becomes. In this case, from the last pregnancy evacuation, how much months it has taken to become GTN? Okay, she had the evacuation from March. How many months after that you are making a diagnosis of GTN? That is the antecedent pregnancy and the interval between the pregnancy and the thing. Okay, you need not go because some people will come only after 16 weeks or 18 weeks of amenorrhea. Then if you calculate it, is already 4 months beyond. That is not. So from that pregnancy, end of that pregnancy or termination of that pregnancy or a delivery, if the patient had a delivery on a particular day, from there, what is the interval to diagnose the GTN is the antecedent pregnancy interval. In this case, it is molar pregnancy. The other case, it may be an abortion. Some cases, it will be following a delivery, which is very difficult to think. So we have to take it from that point, how many months or years is taken to develop the GTN.
GTN, sir, our question is from our complete evacuation.
That is incomplete evacuation. You take second evacuation.
I think, sir, from diagnosis only we can take the date.
No, diagnosis is GTN. When you take the GTN diagnose, that is the time to backwards. When you had the GTN, I mean the molar pregnancy diagnosed, from there, how much time it has taken to become GTN. So from GTN point of diagnosis to how many months back actually the molar evacuation was or a delivery has happened. That is the time interval.
Sir, our question is, in this case, first time it was incomplete evacuation. Second time it was complete evacuation.
Yeah.
So the calculation is from complete evacuation or
complete
from
evacuation. Complete evacuation.
So
Complete evacuation.
It is
Complete
clear
evacuation.
now.
Because that is the time that you have that pregnancy has terminated.
Yes.
The last pregnancy is terminated only at that time.
Yes, sir.
Delivers sometime after full-time delivery, with the time of delivery, year of delivery, date of delivery from where, how many months or years taken to develop the GTN. So the other things are because of our difficulty in emptying the uterus. From there, from that point, how many weeks or months has taken to have the cancer development.
Yes, sir. It's clear now. Yes.
That is the interval. So other things are. I hope the points what I said was actually we have to be careful and don't worry about the prostaglandin for ripening of the cervix than landing in this sort of a trouble for incomplete evacuation and then patient requiring chemotherapy and other. And especially if, and make it a point to do a scan after 1 week or 10 days of the evacuation to make sure complete evacuation of that. At that time, the uterus is involuted. If it is something is there, you may have to do another curettage, but not a chemotherapy.
Sir, it's after 1 week or after 48 hours?
No, 48 hours you may not, need not do because the uterus has to involute. You can do at the time of 48 hours, you are discharging the patient, you can see. It may not be complete because the uterine
There is no hard and fast rule. It may be either 3 to 4 days or maybe either within 7 days. There is no hard and fast rule for second ultrasound to see whether complete.
1 week. I will say 1 week.
1 week. Okay, sir.
1 week.
Sir,
1 week.
Beta HCG after 48 hours of evacuation and ultrasonography 1 week after evacuation.
How many days will you keep the patient in the hospital after evacuation?
Usually
We can discharge patient.
1 day.
Yeah, yes, sir.
For the same day, are you discharging on the same day?
Sometimes on the same day we discharge the patient. Sometimes we discharge
patient.
on the same
Okay.
day.
See, the basal HCG value, a better correlation is after the evacuation about 48 hours, but we may not keeping the patient. So when the patient is discharged the second day,
Yes, sir.
see the half-life of HCG is 36 hours. Okay. After the evacuation, the beta HCG will fall down,
Yes, sir.
particularly after 48 hours. So if your beta HCG actually should be a value after evacuation, not from the pre-evacuation. But many centers, we don't have that second value. So we go by the first value from where we anticipate 10 times fall. Say if it was 10,000, it has to become minimum 1,000 after 1 week. That is from there. From this 1 week, in second week, again 1/10 of the value, that is a normal regression. So if this is not possible to have a beta HCG after 24 hours when you are sending her away, or when the patient is sent after 2 days, at least then also do we can
ওপারের লাইটটা বন্ধ করে আসতে হবে, পারবে?
আস্তে কথা বলো। কে?
yes.
Dr. Bhagya, please, your comment.
Bhagyam,
Bhagyalakshmi, please.
Dr. Bhagyalakshmi, unmute and give your comments. We have to see you. Your photo. You are saying fake.
Yes,
Please unmute and open your video, madam. Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Bhagyam, give your comments.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. We
I'm
want your
having little network problem today.
yeah. Okay.
Your video also on.
Please give your comment. Bhagyalakshmi, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just suggesting that most of the centers we have a habit of doing the pre-evacuation beta HCG. Always, whenever a molar pregnancy comes, it's always immediately we do the beta HCG. Sir, we evacuate. So, will it be a good idea when we call them for a check ultrasound after 1 week to do the beta HCG then after 1 week, or it's if it is essential that we do it 48 hours after, because otherwise the patient will have to stay longer in the hospital and again come back after 7 days. So if we do the beta HCG and the check ultrasound after 7 days, is that wise enough?
It is perfect. It is
Yes, sir.
to have it after 1 week.
What I wanted. And sir, and going back to your case, I think I agree fully that only the beta HCG value is not only important. We have to see so many other things also, like if there is some thicker luteins or there is a vascular area in the myometrium, then I think, sir, we have to choose between hysterectomy and, but if everything is fine and the beta HCG is gradually falling, I think, sir, we can wait a little more.
Yes. That is what I felt.
Usually in your center, Bhagyalakshmi, please, and how many days interval do you follow up with beta HCG your patients? Usually here we do the beta HCG 2 weekly. Our patient cannot come and they cannot afford the weekly beta HCG.
Good. It is good.
Yeah. 15 days usually in
We are not going to miss anything if you do every 2 weeks. Also, you will pick up the GTN. Definitely, it is good.
Yes.
And rather than not doing, once in 2 weeks is very good and good enough, and that has been accepted. In fact, when we started the program in 1990, about 30 years back or so, it was radio immunoassay. The quantity assay was not there with the other system, and we were not able to do the radio immunoassay every week. And we were collecting the blood sample and serum was separate and kept there. And every 2 weeks only we were doing. And we could all the cases within 10 to 12 weeks of evacuation without missing anything. And this we have presented in one of the world congress, and they accepted. And now, in fact, the RCOG recommend that only at least once in 2 weeks. So you are perfectly in order to do once in 2 weeks, but make it mandatory.
Yes,
Not,
sir. Yes.
Not that they don't come.
We have questions. Sometimes
you have
our
to.
patients,
Yeah.
they can't, when we advise the transvaginal ultrasonography, they usually, and there is another point to the size of the mass, that the uterine mass. Sometimes that the ultrasonography, this shows that is the invasive mode, and not they mention the size of the uterine mass. In that cases, how do you count the measure the
See, this case was actually, by that time it was 6 or 8 weeks of evacuation.
Yes.
Isn't it? Now, actually the vascularity was not, or the nodule was not seen on the musculature of the uterine wall actually.
Yeah.
It was on the uterine mass on the periphery at the junction of the myometrium and the mass inside.
Yeah.
So, and the patient was not having any bleeding in between.
Yes.
Okay. So a very aggressive type of a local invasion will produce severe bleeding either per vaginum or into the peritonic cavity. Luckily, probably because of the chemotherapy, the vessels might have been poisoned quite, and the invasion hasn't taken place. But the residual mass is still there. Now, originally, whether it was a complete evacuation, the question comes again. Whether it is a necrotic tissue which was remaining there as a mass is also a question. When the beta HCG is not, going up without anything immediately after the evacuation, again, I'll stress the point of repeat HCG, scan also along with the HCG. Once you make sure it is incomplete, then anything going up is due to an persistent disease. So that is point which has to be taken care of. A repeat scan has to be done. If not, transvaginal, transabdominal also is good. And if not 1 week, at least second week. But if it is incomplete, usually the patient will come with bleeding in between.
No, sir. My question is, sometimes it is written that there is for one scoring point is size, tumor size. Tumor size.
Tumor size, this is you have to take it after 2 months. If it is such a size is there which is remaining tissue, we cannot say that it is all necrotic dead tissue which is incomplete evacuation. We cannot say. You take it as a tumor of 6 centimeter. That is why the score has gone to 10.
No, sometimes it is not written. It is just written that it is invasive mole. Not tumor size is not mentioned. In that case, how will you measure the tumor size?
Now, measurement of the tumor is into the uterine wall.
Yeah.
If a nodule.
Yeah.
What is remaining inside, whether it is extension from the uterine wall into the uterine cavity as a tumor growing into the cavity, we cannot say at this point of time. Whether it is a dead necrotic tissue which is remaining there is cannot be said also. So when you do a hysterectomy, please have a look and let us be seeing that report later on.
Okay. Is there any role of the oophorectomy in these patients?
If the patient has to be told that her ovary is being removed.
She is 48 years.
48, of course, you can remove.
42. If she is 42, then
টেবিলটা যেখানে ফোন থাকে সমস্ত
Now, patient.
Is there any role of, sir, you are muted. Sir, you are muted.
Unmute করুন মাহিনা জাপা.
Okay. If the patient is 42, it is up to her to decide. Even if she is postmenopause, still the ovary produces certain hormone. If the patient is having any family history of ovarian malignancy, uterine malignancy, breast malignancy, then definitely you will counsel the patient.
Okay, sir. If there is any risk of the ovarian malignancy, then only we can do oophorectomy. Otherwise, only simple hysterectomy is the surgery. Am I right, sir?
Yeah. The patient patient has to be counseled that if I leave ovary, you have got the risk of developing an ovarian mass.
Yes, sir.
That has to be counseled. But there are benefits. If you are leaving the ovary, please remove the tubes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And another thing is, every time we will have to the re-scoring and re-staging of the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if this patient, we have hysterectomy has done, and again we have to, how will we follow up the patient like normal GTN patients?
So in this case,
yeah,
after the hysterectomy, you have to give at least 1 or 2 more courses of chemotherapy.
Yes.
Then you see the fall of HCG level.
As routine follow-up, as other GTN patients.
Yeah.
Same way. Yeah.
Same way. She will respond very quickly after hysterectomy. Very well. She will respond.
Another question. If this patient, her beta HCG is again rising, and then we will have to re-stage the patient and re-scoring. Am I correct?
Rescoring
every time. Every time when the patient recurrence or every time we will have to re-stage and re-score the patient. Every time.
After all metastatic workup.
Yeah, all metastatic. That is, and doing all metastatic workup, we will have to re-staging and re-scoring, and accordingly we'll treat the patient.
So if she may be high risk again, so continue multi-agent. In this case, I feel that Imaco will be she will be responding to Imaco even after surgery. You
Yes.
can stick on to Imaco only, 1 or 2 more courses, and she will come down to normalize. And then, because it was taken as a high risk case, you may have to give at least 2 more courses, if
Yeah.
not 3, after normalization.
Bhagya, please. Bhagya. Bhagya, look,
No,
please. Yeah.
Dr. Shana, with your permission, I have one
Yes.
little doubt. Can I ask Shekaran,
Yes.
sir?
Yes, yes.
Yes, madam.
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir. When it is written in the books about that scoring size of the tumor, including uterus.
Yes.
Sir, actually, that's sometimes I had also talked about this to Dr. Leon also. So he told that you have to take the total size of the uterus. Sir, but
It is not.
what is your
No,
comment on
no,
that?
no, no. It is not written like that. The size of the uterus is not written. Which
No,
book?
no.
Size
Size
of the
of the
tumor, including
tumor,
uterus.
including uterus. Yes, it is written in book. Size of the tumor, including uterus. Yes, Bhagya is correct. Yes, sir.
No, in which case it may be 12 centimeters.
Yes, sir. So that is always a doubt in everyone's mind.
Yeah.
You are hanging on to some minor points which is not which is not easily answerable. We have got so many other staging points, which is tumor size doesn't mean, as far as I know, doesn't mean
Not the uterine size. Sir, it's only the uterus size. Only the tumor size.
tumor size only. And tumor size is usually in the myometrium.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As a nodule. It will not be in the uterine cavity unless there is a widespread invasion of the musculature protrude into the uterine cavity. So the uterine size is not the tumor size.
Yes, sir.
Now I will clarify it if you want further on, because don't take my word, because everyone is in
No,
medicine.
sir, it's written in the book like that, and Shana is also agreeing that
Yes.
that is not only mind out. Many people also, sir, who
Yes.
have we have discussed it many times that this is a
Bhagya,
hobby.
which book you are referring to?
Sir, I think wherever the scoring is written, it is written tumor size including uterus. So and the measurements are given. and the-
Actually, that scoring system was started by Bakshay, which was taken by WHO, from where Vigo has taken as a thing. But the modification is that liver and brain has been given the maximum point of 4.
Yes, sir.
ABO grouping was excluded.
Yes, yes, sir.
So that is the modification. And then there is no intermediate score. That is the later. So
Yes, sir.
this tumor size cannot be taken
Uterus size.
brain size.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
The
sir.
logic,
I wanted this clarification. Yes, sir. Yes.
as per my logic, if you think of uterine size after 3 or 4 weeks of an evacuation, it can be still 10-week size or 8-week size. And if you measure that, it will be 10 centimeter into 6 centimeter, 7 centimeter, like that. If you take that size as a tumor, then the score goes above 2 or 3. So that may not be the real situation. Anyway, I'll clarify. Thank you very much for bringing it out. Last time also, somebody has put it very seriously, which is the size of the uterus as a tumor has to be taken. So also the ovarian lutein cyst is not taken as a tumor size. The lutein cyst may be there initially.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is not taken as a tumor and measure it as a tumor size. That is a functional.
Agreed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a functional, sir.
It is a functional cyst due to the SCG, ISCG. FIGO case report, somebody has written that tumor size including uterus in FIGO 2018. I don't know whether I missed that point because we were sitting together and arguing so many things to finalize the report of 2018. Somebody has pointed out in the chat box that FIGO size. So,
Yes, because in 2018 it is written. Yes, sir. Dr. Rama is with us. We can.
So I am responsible if there is a mistake like that. I am also responsible because.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Sir, I think it means that we should measure the tumor which is in the uterus. So
Yeah.
I think that's a little slip in the English actually. It cannot be the uterus size, but it has been there not only in FIGO,
If
the
it is
previous
written-
WHO everywhere. It's the same word.
Yeah. So I will go back to our group of who has written this guideline in 2018. FIGO, it has come out. So I will go back to all our colleagues in a week's time. To all of them, if it is written like that, I might have missed it, or because I am not thinking of it, it may not be seen by me. What you do not, I mean, what your mind doesn't know, the eyes will not see. So I might have missed it that way. If it is written there, of course, it is our duty to clarify it and correct it. So we'll look into it. I'll go back to all our team members. Big people, I am only there as because of some work. So I'll go back to
No,
it.
sir, you are also because sir. Sorry for bothering you, but I think we
No,
can have little clarification.
We'll have a look into it. We'll have a look into it. Okay, sir.
Sir, Dr. Rama Joshi is with us. Dr. Rama, please.
Is she there? Madam is there. I thought she with the CS service, she has left us.
No, we have another case with endometrial stromal sarcoma.
Can I ask a question, madam, please?
Yes, yes.
What will be the follow-up in this patient after post-hysterectomy?
As usual follow-up, as usual.
Like any other case.
Yeah.
Here, even if the beta HCG has become negative, you have to still give 1 or 2 more courses of Imaco. Okay. That's okay. So Rama madam is still there. Okay.
Yes.
Is there. I missed her. Okay. Thank you.
It was a wonderful, actually, a wonderful discussion going on, and you have, Professor Shekharan has made each and every point clear, and Bhagya made him to make, certain more points clearer. And this had been a really wonderful, actually, a very interesting discussion, and I was really enjoying it. So I didn't disturb you in between.
I never knew that you were listening to all our this thing. Thank you. Thank you for this thing. Somebody has asked, why not a hysterectomy initially? Why to wait all those things? No, there is no place for initially doing a hysterectomy for multipara. We have done it, but still the patient has to be on follow-up. There was a question in a multiparous elderly woman with the mole. Why don't you do a hysterectomy then? Even if you do a hysterectomy, you have to have the patient on follow-up. We have done 10-15 cases hysterectomy like that for elderly patient. But one of the patient developed, she was on follow-up, she developed GTN and she was to be given multiple courses of chemotherapy. So hysterectomy will reduce the possibility of choriocarcinoma, especially invasive mole. It will prevent invasive mole, but doesn't prevent the GTN developing. So she has to be also after hysterectomy. Then hysterectomy is a major surgery than evacuation. Primary risk is also there. For doing it. That is also there. Okay. I think.
শাহানা, আমি একটু বলতে চাচ্ছি। Thank you, Rama Joshi, attending with us, and Dr. Shekharan, Dr. Bhagyalakshmi Naik. Very wonderful seminar. You are with us, but I am here. I agree fully with you, but I like to add something. Because of imaging, we have some confusion many times. Last 3 to 4 cases discussed here, every case is repeat DNC. Why repeat DNC? We have to evaluate the case before the taking decision of suction evacuation. At first, we have to evaluate the patient clearly, and one senior person will be assigned for evacuation and curatives. So no need for second DNC. And on the other hand, there are some misleading from imaging. If there is only 10 ml, they usually retain product of conception. Even with these reports, somebody go for second DNC. So it is very important to evaluate the patient at first and to send that radiologist who is very expert to diagnose this kind of patient. I have 2 patients of invasive mole. Yes, 2 patients with invasive mole, but we have treated the patient with chemotherapy and they are still good. We don't go for hysterectomy because both of them below 30 years. So they are doing very good. And on the other hand, we have a patient with 28 weeks pregnancy. They told that this is a case of invasive mole with pregnancy. Then we did a beta SCG. It was 2 lakh at that time. Thereafter, we did an MRI. After MRI, they said that the molar tissue is just hanging within the amniotic cavity, no invasion seen. So we just keep the patient for follow-up. After follow-up, after 4 months, 4 weeks, the beta HCG then decreases to 26,000. Thereafter, it decreases to 2,000. But the patient goes spontaneously in labor at 36 weeks gestation. Then a preterm male baby delivered, that was 2.5 kg, and whole placenta and molar tissue came out spontaneously. And we sent it for histopathological examination. The report came as partial mole. So there are variation of different cases. And I think imaging is very important. Among this, we should sometime choose MRI to identify those who are very difficult cases. And also we have to keep in mind that symptom also important thing. The size of the uterine mass, somehow size is there, but the patient is asymptomatic. Beta HCG is decreasing, no parvaginal bleeding, and we can continue the chemotherapy. So,
Sure. Every case is important. Now the problem with the ultrasound evaluation of the early pregnancy before 10 weeks, it is difficult to diagnose a molar change by anybody.
Yes.
At 9 weeks minimum, the period of gestation should be there to make a diagnosis or ultrasound diagnosis of molar pregnancy. Now, every patient in our part is coming at 6-7 weeks for evaluation. You make it as an incomplete abortion or a failing pregnancy, and it could become a full-blown vesicular mole if you left it at 10 or 11 weeks. But before that, we intervene without any follow-up, and some of these cases will go on to develop GTN later on. So that is the problem now we are facing. Use of ultrasound in the early pregnancy for evaluation, for making confirmation of a normal pregnancy. If it is found abnormal, then it is evacuated, not followed up. It could have been one of the case of vesicular mole. The case you are telling is a twin with a molar pregnancy is very much there. One is normal baby, the other one is a complete mole. In which case we have to confirm the normalcy of the fetus. In partial mole, the fetus is not normal. It is a triploidy. Baby will have so many defects. So if you see a baby and the mole, do a repeat scan, see that the mole is separate from the placenta of the baby. By ultrasound, 3D ultrasound, if necessary, karyotype by amniocentesis, and make sure the baby is normal to continue to term. And then you will get a baby with a risk of bleeding at any time, need for intervention like a cesarean section any time, or hysterectomy. So after counseling, if you make sure that's a complete mole and a normal fetus, and patient can be allowed to continue. So that is a rare situation, but it is possible. We had one case like that. Okay, ma'am. Right.
Yes, thank you very much.
We have another case. Probably it is around 11 p.m. in Bangladesh. Can we continue, Dr. Rama, please, or shall we end the session? Ma'am, please.
You can continue.
No. Okay. It's too late. Yes. Today, our president, the Oncology Club president, Professor Dr. E.M.A. Haiser, he has already left. He is feeling sick, so he is left, and I request the chairpersons of the session, Professor Dr. Akhtari Hossain Choudhury. He is the head of the Department of Obstetric and Gynae Oncology Department in Shohid Roman Medical College, from where the cases were presented. I request Dr. Akhtari Hossain Choudhury to tell something about today's session. Dr. Akhtari Hossain Choudhury.
মশারি পকে জানি এছাড়া ওষুধ
Makruha,
ওষুধ পকে জানি
Makruha, Fatima Appa.
কোন দিব?
হ্যাঁ, ওই। Probably she's left. Yeah, probably she left. Kamal bhai,
কিছুক্ষণ
please.
আগেও তো দেখছি।
এখন তো দেখি না, বোধহয় চলে গেছে। So we like to end our session. I request, as our sir is already left, so I request our scientific secretary of Oncology Club, Dr. A.F.M. Kamaluddin bhai, please conclude the session and please give the vote of thanks to our faculties today.
Thanks, Shahana. It was always tumor board is an interesting session because we discussed many problems and every case is an education for us. And today we were fortunate to have a bunch of experts. A.K. Goodman was with us, Rama Joshi from Delhi was with us, Professor Shekharan was with us, and finally Dr. Bhagya was with us. So we enjoyed, and Supriya was also with us. So we had 5 faculties, and it was a great meeting, and I'm sure we learned many things, and it was interesting to discuss cases among us. And on behalf of Oncology Club, I want to express our gratitude to all the 5 foreign faculties who have given their time to enrich our session, and we hope that this will continue in future. And I want to thank Bogura Shohid Zia Rahman Medical College and Mahmood Ali Hospital faculties who have presented their case and their department, and to all the participants who have participated and all the discussants who have discussed and made the program rich. So thank you very much for joining today's session, and hopefully to see you next week in our next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kamal and Dr. Shahana, for the kind invitation. And really, it was pleasure meeting you all. We met our own people, I think maybe after a very long time, Dr. Shekharan, Dr. Bhagya, and also Supriya, because we also meet these days virtually. And to meet you all was really a pleasure. And it was very interesting program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice program.
Thank you very much. As we expect you in future that you will be with us, and probably Dr. Razia in favor. Dr. Razia Sultana, do you like to comment anything from Shohid Zia Rahman Medical College Hospital? Dr. Razia Sultana, please.
Dr. Nipa was here. Nipa was here.
Yeah, Akhtar Hussain.
This is a good, today's discussion is very much helpful for us. We learned many things, and that will be very helpful for our routine practice. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much. Dr. Akhtar Hussain, please.
Thank you, Shahana. I am sorry, my net is disturbed. Thank you, respected faculty from home and abroad, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum and very good evening. Malignancy is one of the major cause of female death worldwide. In our country, CA cervix, CA breast, ovarian malignancy most common. Every year, a significant number of women died in our country due to malignancy. So, policy making and proper guideline for management of malignant case is very important to detect and reduce the morbidity and mortality. I hope this kind of tumor board play a key role for the management of malignancy and reduce mortality. So as a gynecologist from periphery, I extend my gratitude to all the organizer and participant for making this hopeful events, and especially thanks to Professor Shahana for arranging the webinar and giving us such opportunity. Again, thanks to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Appa. Thank you very much. Good night. And thank you all the participants. You are being with us, and thanks Dr. Bhagyalakshmi, Dr. Roma ma'am, Dr. Shekharan sir, everybody. And we request that in future we'll get you regularly in our tumor board or our debate and the journal club session. Without your presence, this session would not be helpful, and it will be not enjoyable. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night. Khuda Hafiz.
Good night.